Welcome to the Higher Self Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to help you unravel anything keeping you from a life of true abundance, joy, and happiness, which is your birthright. Each week, we'll bring in different guests specifically tailored to help you on your journey to discovering your higher self. Whether it's spirituality, business, finances, health, or relationships, there are no topics that are off limits. So get ready and enjoy this week's episode of The Higher Self. Welcome to this week's episode of The Higher Self. I've got a special guest with us this week, and I feel like you should probably get ready to get punched in the mouth just based off of the energy so far with a little bit of truth, which I like because sometimes we need to get punched in the mouth. We need to get wakened up. Rob Dial, how are you?
I'm awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, man. Listen, let's get right into it. Give me the basics. What is Rob Dial all about?
So I'll give you my story and then I'll tell you what I'm all about. So when I was younger, life was pretty decent. And my father, I realized when I was 9 years old, was an alcoholic. My parents got divorced when I was 10. And then my father passed away when I was 15. I went through a lot of the things. I always tell people I was lucky to have him as an alcoholic father because he didn't beat me. He didn't touch me inappropriately. He didn't yell at me. He would just get drunk and fall asleep. But in turn, with him falling asleep, there was a lot of just forgetting. So there was emotional neglect more than anything else. And I didn't realize the downstream effect of emotional neglect until I was older and went and saw a therapist. And they're like, you were neglected. And I was like, no. Like I was fed, everything was fine. Like we had a house, like we were really poor, but like I never was like, I don't know if I'm going to eat. And he was like, no, you were emotionally neglected. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, I guess I kind of was. Yeah. And so then that happened when I was 15, he passed away. And then when I was 19, have you ever heard of Cutco? Cutco knives?
Yeah, Cutco, yeah.
So I went in for an interview there, started there, and they recruit 40,000 people a year and maybe like 0.001% stay. I stayed. I hired my first coach when I was 19. He's Hal Elrod, the guy who wrote The Miracle Morning. He was
Hal.
Yeah, I was his first coaching client.
Get out of here.
One-on-one. And so I was him and his best friend, John Burgos' first coaching client. And they completely changed the trajectory of my life of being like, oh, I can get out of this. And then so what I loved about Cutco and the reason why I was there for 5 years, I trained over 2,000 salespeople by the time I left when I was 23. And the thing I loved about it was personal development. And they're hardcore on personal development, like learn, grow. And so my team, I ended up running out of the entire company. There's 750 offices. I ran the number one office out of the entire company. Was like, I just love teaching personal development. But the problem was I got my worthiness from success, which means that I worked my ass off 110 hours a week, every single week for 3 years running my company. And I burned myself out. Ran it into the ground, went from having a bunch of money as a young kid to literally having nothing. Lived off of pasta for 2.5 months from Walmart. That was literally the only thing I ate for 2.5 months. And then was 5 months behind on my car payment. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so I subconsciously crashed and burned that ship that I was on, that plane ride that I was on, right? And so left there and then got into corporate sales and sales training and stuff. And then I was January 2015, I was in Jason's Deli with my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. And it was like, I don't know if anybody else has had it, but it was like my life got to a fever pitch. Whereas like I was starting to feel depressed. I had these injuries, so I wasn't able to work out anymore, from working out like 7 times a week to not working out for months. And I felt like depressed. And we were in Jason's Deli and I saw all of these people and they were like yelling at their kids. And I still this day, like, don't know if it was as bad as it was or if I was just imagining this. And it was like, people were yelling at their kids and they were screaming and they were overweight and they looked unhealthy. And I was like, I'm gonna start a podcast. And she was like, what is that? Like this 2015, there wasn't like people who listened to it, but I had this microphone and I had a stand for it because I'm a musician as well.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm going to start telling people all the stuff that I've learned, like the things that I have forgotten over time that's gotten me into this depression. And I was making great money. I was 27 years old, making like 250 grand a year, barely working from home for this sales company. And I quit that to do this podcasting thing. And I just started teaching it and growing and learning and, ended up becoming a coach. And the good thing about being a coach was I already had a ton of sales experience. I understood the sales process. So then by 5 years of being a coach, I was making just under $1 million a year as a one-on-one coach. And I realized that the average person makes like 13 grand a year, 14 grand a year as a life coach. And then, so then I started teaching it. And so now I have a company, we have 34 people that are under me. And, we'll probably do about $7 to $10 million this year. And we teach people how to grow their coaching businesses. We actually started that before it was a cool thing to do. Now everybody teaches that.
Yeah.
But we specifically work with just life coaches. And I teach them a strategy that I've learned and crafted of like how to take somebody through a powerful conversation. And, I think the trauma that I went through in my life was a gift to be able to do this. I would not do it had I not had that father that neglected me.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I try to tell people that all the time, that some of your deepest traumas are your greatest gifts.
I think all of them are greatest gifts.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. If you allow yourself to see them that way.
Yeah.
I want to start with this. I was just thinking about my boys. I was just thinking about my boys, and I was thinking about, at some point in time, I would love to get them into sales.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
sales and door knocking, for me, it was real estate. And for all of you that are out there listening, we get bombarded with messages. How do I change my life? How do I change my life? There is nothing like getting rejected and learning the nuances of getting rejected and learning how to handle objections and learning how to keep persevering in midst of that rejection.
Yeah.
And I want to just start off with saying, when it comes to my children, I thought at some point in time, I'm going to tell them to go get into sales. I don't care if it's for 2 years.
For sure.
I don't care what they do, but sales does something to you where no matter what happens, you can be on a deserted island. You can make $1 million a year.
100%.
It's easy.
Yep.
Talk to me about that.
So the reason why I got attracted to sales is because I actually wanted to be a psychologist. But I hate school. So that doesn't work well. I was talking to my chiropractor. He came over to my house last night and he was like, I hated school too. And I was like, but you went to 10 years, 12
Who's
years.
your chiropractor?
His name is Hugh.
Okay.
Dr. Hugh.
Okay.
And so he came out to my house and we were talking about it. And I was like, yeah, I wanted to be a psychologist, but I just hate school. Like I don't like being told what to do. I don't like being told when to show up. I never studied because I wasn't just passionate about it and stuff. I did really well in school, but I just hated it. And so I got into sales and I was like, oh my God, all of this is psychology. Like every bit of sales is psychology. And it's not persuasion because there's a lot of, I always say you're a really shitty salesperson if your person feels like they're being pushed.
You know what, man? I got to stop you because I think that's what made me so good.
Yeah.
Is that everybody was teaching the art of persuading people, right? And I was like, no, that's not
you got to listen really well.
That's
you've got to ask good questions and you've got to think, how does my product mold to this person's needs?
And you have to be unattached with the outcome.
Right.
Because if it doesn't, then that's the best thing you can do for them.
Right. Yeah. And at the same time, like what you said, the reason why I think it's so good is, and people are always like, what? How did you grow your following and all this stuff? Because the way I started was I did the podcast, then I started doing Facebook. 5 years ago, I started doing, it was me, Jay Shetty, Prince EA, the three of us were making viral videos and sharing each other's stuff. And it was like before people cared about making viral videos, right? And so they're like, yesterday I was on a Zoom call and someone's like, how do you not care what people think about you? I was like, do you know how many times I've been rejected? Like so many people have told me no over my lifetime, and it all started. How many people have hung up on me? How many people I've been at their kitchen table and they're just like, no, I don't want it. And to be in that position, I think that a lot of your insecurities will come up when you're rejected. There's so many people that are afraid of being rejected. And I think all of your insecurities are going to come up and you're going to be forced to work through them or you're just going to fold. And I think that's the importance of sales is you have all of your insecurities come up. You learn about rejection, you learn about perseverance, you learn about yourself, you learn about the other people, how to work with people. And so for me, like I'm a very introverted person. Like if someone comes over to my house and would have watched me like around, I'm very introverted, but when like I turn on. And it's like sales will get me excited, but also like podcasting and being on video and that gets me excited. But people don't have to be like extroverted to be a great salesperson. My thing was how can I get someone to buy by listening to them and making them feel like I'm not selling?
Yeah. You know what's funny? I shout out, this name just came to me. There's a gentleman by the name of Leslie Wilson.
Yeah.
Right. And Leslie is probably one of the best real estate agents in Southern California. And I'll never forget this. I'll never forget he was a part of my coaching program like way back when. I'm talking maybe even 11, 12 years ago. And he was very quiet and very timid, right? And everyone always had this feeling like they had to be like me, outgoing, outspoken. And here was Leslie. And I remember this. I remember the call. I remember the desk. I remember the house that I was in where it was a moment for me where I was like, is what you're teaching, does it actually work? Because if it works, it's got to be able to work, not just for you, but for other people and people that are not like you.
Right.
So I remember I looked right at Leslie. I think we were on a Zoom or a GoToMeeting or whatever it was back then. And I said, Leslie, you can do this A, B, C, and D. And sure enough, he's the quietest, most mild-mannered guy, and he makes a couple $1,000,000 a year. He does incredible. And my message to all of you out there is that the number one thing holding you back from succeeding in life is that you think you're different than other people. You compare yourself to other people and you allow that doubt to hold you back from taking the action. And when you finally take the action, you're actually so attached to the action having a certain outcome that when it doesn't have that outcome, you go, oh, I guess this is not for me. No, that is the gift. That is your moment to rise to the top. That's your moment to persevere. That's your moment to say, you know what? Even though I got kicked out, I'm going to choose to keep getting back up. And that's the beauty of what working for yourself does for you. And it's something that any human being can choose to do.
For sure. I agree. I love it. I think the thing that I would say, there's a few things that'll bring up your insecurities in life. Number one is getting into a real romantic relationship.
I was just about to say a woman.
Right? All of your shit's going to come up. Number two, I don't have kids yet, but I would assume kids is going to be the other thing.
Get ready for that.
Yeah. Number three is going to be, I think fitness journey is really a big thing as well. There's a lot of insecurities like, why am I doing this? What do I want to be? Can I keep pushing myself to go? And the last one I think is actually starting a business. In sales, whether you work for someone else, is miniature starting your own business, because all of your insecurities, all of your fear of rejection, failure, I don't know if I can do this, are all going to rise to the surface. And you can literally decide like, I'm going to keep going, or I'm not going to do this anymore.
I want to get real granular here, right? And I want to give them, so if they're saying, okay, I'm ready to start sales, let's do this. So I know there's real estate, there's Cutco,
right?
There's insurance. What else? What other industries could people look at?
Oh my God. I don't even know.
Telemarketing.
There's telemarketing.
There's collections.
There's car sales. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a car salesman. That's what actually the whole thing started. So my dad was a salesperson, right? And so I always thought, oh, I want to get into sales with my dad. I've heard there's good money there. And so I applied to work at a luxury car dealership in the town that I grew up in. And I was like 16 and they're like, no, you can't work. Like, we sell Ferraris. Why would a 16-year-old selling Ferraris, right? And so I think that there's, and the thing about it too is like, that I think is important about sales is every single thing that we do is sales. And so I always say that the way that I always get people to kind of think differently about it is the best salespeople in the world is a 2-year-old trying to tell you why they need a popsicle before dinner. And you can't tell me that 2-year-olds don't try to persuade you all day long for what it is that they want.
And when you say no, they're going to keep saying why, why.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, that's ingrained into us, right? Your first date, you're trying to sell the person on the next date. You're trying to sell the person next, and eventually you're trying to sell them how to have sex with you, right? Then eventually you're going to try to keep them around. And so it's like it's all sales. Everything is sales. And so for me, it's like the funny thing was for me is like I worked on sales and personal development for so long that I was like, I don't know if there's a whole lot that I don't know outside of this. Like I feel like I know, like my cup is kind of overflowing. And then I started getting into like outside of personal development was like spiritual development, and I was like the way I saw it was like, there's this cup, right? And we have this cup right here. And this is a personal development cup. And mine was like overflowing. So I've been working it for so long. And then I got into spiritual development and I did some psychedelics. And I was like, holy shit, there's a bucket that is literally so empty at this point in time. And it was like I think the best part about sales is that it got me into personal development, which then got me into spiritual development. Then made me realize like, I don't know shit about anything. And I became the person who thought I knew everything to the person who's like, I'm so humble. I know nothing about nothing. I'm a complete like nobody. And it's like, that's what sales kind of got me into. And so I think that's the important part of sales for me in my journey, is that it allowed all the stuff to come to surface for me to start to work through it, see what it was. And then it got me onto what I think is like the most important thing, which is like how I'm operating in the world and how I'm connecting and all that stuff, which I think sales is the reason why I got into all of that stuff.
I would say 100% agree. 100% agree. Because ultimately, if you think about it, and by the way, all of you, I want to get into spirituality, but there's a lot here to touch on.
Yeah.
Because the majority of the messages we get are all around relationships and money. And I truly believe that having confidence in yourself is for selling yourself.
For sure.
That you're worthy.
Right.
I was talking to my girlfriend this morning, and I forgot what it was, but we started mentioning like, people who have jealousy issues. And she says to me, baby, it's really interesting, but like, for every 100,000 followers you get or whatever, like you would think that I would be worried about that because that's like the majority are women right now.
Right.
And she's like, and I don't care. And she said something, and I love her for this, by the way. This is my girl. She says, and you know why I don't care? And I said, why? I already knew the answer. She says, because I know genuinely I am the baddest woman alive. There's no one like me on planet Earth. And she goes, and guess what? And I go, I already knew what she was saying. And she goes, you feel like that too, don't you? And I said, I absolutely do. I absolutely do. But you see, think about that. I think we should all feel like that.
For sure.
And I think sales teaches you that.
For sure.
Do you agree?
Well, it's funny because I say the same thing to my wife. So
Really?
it's like
one of us are off then, right?
we make jokes about it, and I'm like, "Who are you gonna leave me for?" Like,
That's right.
I'm fucking like I think, and this is the thing. I have a friend that said this one time. I was at an event, and he was speaking, and someone was like, "You seem like kind of full of yourself," and he goes, looks him dead in the eye. He goes, "Who the fuck should I be full of?" He goes, "Somebody else." And I was like, that clicked in my head of like, that's how everybody should be. Like I think about him like. Who would she leave me for? Like, and I think everybody should feel that exact, like, I'm fucking awesome. And I think that every single person should think that exact same way about themselves.
You should. And when you do, you'll attract higher caliber people.
For sure.
Because by the way, there's a flip side to this. It's almost as if there's like, you know, it also pushes you to be better.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like if they leave you for someone else, well, damn, well, kudos to that guy.
Yeah.
That means that's showing me I got some more stuff to work on.
And let me tell you something, just because of the fact I think I'm fucking awesome doesn't mean that I don't show up in the relationship fully. So I'm going to give that caveat to anybody who's out there and like, oh, well, if I'm so fucking awesome, then they're they going to leave me for someone less? It's like, no, if I think I'm fucking awesome, I want to show up to the relationship as awesome as possible and try to get better in it too. Cause it's like every time I feel like every month I'm like, I'm getting better in our relationship, I'm getting better and I'm getting better. And it's like a cup that still hasn't gotten completely full.
100%.
And I'm like, I'm trying to get better. And I think in my personal opinion, I think that being the best in your relationship actually makes you the best outside of your relationship as well.
100%.
That is like the biggest cup for me that I've been like trying to fill and trying to work on, because, you know, we all have things that happen with our parents, and our closest person, the person we're in a relationship with, becomes a proxy for our parents. And so it's like, as I work through that, I see more things starting to come up as well.
It's so interesting how, you know, I'm just going to bring this up again. It's so interesting how, because we just went through something this morning, how half of the time, as long as I think the number one key to you being and living in a successful relationship is emotional maturity and intellect.
For sure.
Like you've got to be able to understand what's going on inside of you and why it's going on. And then when you realize that something's going on, you got to be able to take a deep breath and go, you know what? I realized that I was behaving this way because of A, B, C, and D. And that shows vulnerability. And vulnerability is strength, you know? And I think that the second thing is in relationship, which I love about this relationship that I'm in. I told her earlier today, she says, baby, I said, baby, I don't mind getting in arguments with you. I don't mind getting in disagreements with you. I don't mind getting uncomfortable with you. And I said, you know why? She says, why? Because I know there's light at the end of the tunnel. But for there to be light at the end of the tunnel, that means that human beings have to be open to letting go of their shit, their guard, their defenses, their pride, and be able to allow their emotions to simmer down just enough to calm down and see the other person's perspective. And when two human beings can do that, then you can get back into your hearts. For sure. Because that's what happens. Essentially, you go into your mind, your ego starts running amok.
Makes up a whole story that's not true.
Makes up a whole story that is absolutely not true. And you get two choices at that point. Either A, you get to defend the fact that you're right, or B, you get to drop in your heart and be happy.
Right.
You know?
And actually connect. And it's so funny because we're like, I don't talk about sales a whole lot, but as we're talking about sales, I'm like, all of this is still the same. Like, it's like the relationship with the person that you're in is about, you know, getting yourself out of your head and going into your heart and being like, let me connect to this other person. Let me see what's actually happening here. And I think that does make a great salesperson is sitting there, intellectually understanding him. That's the gift that I think I got most from my father was that when I was 9 years old, I had to become very emotionally intelligent. Like I was by myself a lot. You know, so I was like a latchkey kid when I was 8. I would let myself in. I was by myself a lot. And then what happened was when he was, you know, we were going through all of this shit, I actually kind of became like my mom's therapist as we were going through it because she didn't know how to navigate with what was going on. And so when I got into the relationship that I'm currently in, it was funny because she had some like tumultuous relationships, and I'm not the type of person like, I'll get mad if I need to get mad and stuff. But a lot of times what I will do is take that step back and be like, okay, let me take a breath. Let me see what's going on. And there was one time where I was in drinking. We were at a party, and this is like 4 months into dating, right? And she had been drinking, and she said something to me, and I didn't like what it was. It was pretty rude is what it was. And I looked her in the eye and I go, listen, you didn't mean to say that, I'm sure. We're not going to talk about this right now, but we're going to have a conversation later. But I don't like being spoken to that way. And she went,
good for you.
Because she was used to relationships where I say something, you say something, and we're fighting back and forth. And that's how we show that we love each other. We got in the car and she's like, I'm sorry. Like, and it was literally, she was able to process through like an hour of being at a pool party and go, yeah, like I see how I showed up incorrectly. And then from that moment on, our relationship completely changed. We've never really had a blow up in 9 years of being together.
I want all of you to rewind and listen to what he just said, because it is absolutely so true. And by the way, I want you to notice this for you men, something I got to talk to you. That is a man being in his masculine, holding space, and then that power, strength, security, and energy causes the woman, where she's normally used to reacting and defending, which is the masculine, it allows her to go,
she feels safe.
She feels safe.
Yeah. That was a big thing. We had a conversation on before we got married, was what our roles are going to be in the relationship. And it was hard for her because, you know, she's also a life coach. She's built a business. She's successful with it. She does coaching inside of my business, all of this. And we realized she's very feminine and amazing and like the sweetest, most loving person I've ever met. Right. And like the amount that she like loves our dogs is just like, I don't think I've ever loved anything as much. And so I'm learning this from her and being able to see it. And I said something to her, which was really big. And we were talking about the masculine and feminine and how what I want my role to be, and if it's okay with you, I want my role to be as the provider. Like, and I want to be the provider because it makes me feel like I love you. And like, that is the way I like to show love. I like to be the provider. I like to be a safe space. We don't need you to work, any of these types of things. And the thing I appreciate about you is you fucking love. Like, you love so much and so hard, and better than I have the capacity to right now. And when we have children, I want that for them. I want to learn it from you. And I want you to feel safe and taken care of. And it was the wildest thing. She just starts crying. And she's like, I don't know why I'm crying. And I was like, it's okay. You don't have to know. Like, there's something that might be there. And she's like crying. And she's like, that's like, the first thing I'm thinking of is like, that's like the biggest gift is just I said, I want to lead. I want you to love. How does that feel? And we can both learn from each other in this. And she started crying and she was crying. Then a couple of days later, she's like, I think I figured out what it was. She's like, in this day and age, it's a woman is you have to go run your own business. You have to masculine. And she's like, it's scary for me to drop into my feminine and to think that I can be taken care of, because I've never really felt taken care of. I've never really felt like it was like her back was always against the wall, right? So masculine came out, and she's like, it's uncomfortable, but it's actually really exciting for me to feel like I can drop into something like that. And I think that that the roles are not really spoken about as much. I heard, we listened to a podcast where Steven speaks. If you know him, he talks about it, and he says, it's not about equality. Like, equality, everybody needs to be equal in everything in life. That's 100% needs to be true. But in a relationship, it's about the balance.
That's right.
And that was like a game-changing conversation. And within like a few days, both of us, the energy of and we've been together 9 years, both of us, the energy of the relationship just shifted. There was something that was behind the scenes.
By the way, what was really beautiful, I caught your love for her as you were explaining to me what happened to her. I saw you well up.
Yeah.
I saw you get emotional.
For sure.
Yeah. Because it does feel incredible as a man to be able to provide that for a woman.
For sure.
And I think that a lot of men and women right now are having a difficult time with this. And there's so much clashing and arguing around it, you know? And it's simply because it's definitely about equality. It's just that we as men and women bring different characteristics to the table. we have different capacities,
Yeah.
right?
There's things that we're good at and things that we're not good at.
Yeah,
just naturally. And that's a general statement. So there's people that are better at certain things.
And that's all right.
Right.
That's all right, you know? And so really awesome for you to say
One thing that was really good, I saw a lady that was here on your podcast, and it was a clip that you had shared, and she was talking about, and I love it because your reaction was the best part, about how women are not great visionaries. And you're like, oh shit, I can't say this. But I want to tell you though, I shared that with my wife, and because when you look at like when you look at Rocket Fuel, the book, there's visionaries, there's integrators. I'm 100 out of 100 visionary. Like I see it, I'm ready to go. I'll fucking work towards it. We're good. But Lauren's always had resistance to goal setting. And I'm like, let's do our New Year's resolutions. Let's fucking go. Let's get excited. All right, I'm going to work out 7 days a week for the first 30 days. And like, and then she's always been like, there's the resistance. And I showed her that clip, and I kid you not.
I bet it resonated.
Dude, she came to me the next day with all of her goals because she started thinking, how do I want to feel this year? Wow. And she made a fucking list of goals. And I was like, wow. I've never seen her make a list of goals, because it was just, we have different, men usually go through the mind, women usually go through the heart. We can both go through have both access points. But for her, it just resonated more of like, how do I want to feel this year? And then it became like, well, I'm going to be in the sauna this amount of times, in the cold plunge. I'm going to work out this many times. I want to eat this way. I want to do this and take these trips. And so it was wild to see how like it clicked, and that access point made her be able to put the goals down that she really wanted.
And it's so interesting. Please hear what we're saying here. Like the beauty is that like, that's what taps our women into their true power.
For sure.
Their true power is femininity. Yep. It's not masculinity.
Yeah.
They are both masculine and feminine, but their true power comes when they're finally able to drop out of the need to provide, the need to produce, the need to defend and take care of themselves and protect themselves. Because when they were little girls, they weren't, that didn't happen for them. Maybe their father was around, maybe some sort of trauma happened. And when their entire lives, they are being not only told, but they feel like they have to show up in a certain way that it may feel right up here, but it doesn't feel right in here. And then when a man gets to come up and show up in her life and say, baby, it's okay. Like I got you in that aspect.
Yep.
Like I got you up here.
Yep.
You could be that if you want, but it's just not needed.
Yep.
She drops into her heart. She drops into her body. This physically, everything changes.
And what's sexier than like a really confident, powerful woman? Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing sexier than that.
Nothing.
Right?
And then a woman in her feminine, I can't say this enough. Like this is so profound. But a woman in her feminine, in her true femininity, in her smile, in her aura, it doesn't matter what she looks like. It doesn't matter what clothes she wears. It doesn't, nothing to a man, because that's the polarity, right? The man is masculine and the woman is feminine. And so when a woman is feminine, it doesn't matter anything. You're naturally as a man drawn to that energy. And the society today is trying to do the opposite. Society is trying to make women think that what is going to attract a man is the outside.
Yeah.
And that's why so many women are so lost right now, and they're changing themselves and altering themselves, where what they really need to alter is just that journey from living in the mind and going into their heart and opening up their true feminine essence. And trust me, women, you are the honeys that attract the bees.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah. It was funny because we had this conversation, and then the next week I had Tony Robbins on my podcast, and we did the whole thing, and it actually comes out tomorrow, but by the time this podcast comes out, it will be out. And we're doing the whole thing, and Lauren's over to the side, and we're through Zoom and everything. And I said, hey, I've got one more question. I think it's going to help a lot of people. And I also want to know, because I just got married and I want advice from you. You seem to have a really good relationship. Like, what do you think kept it that way? And what he literally said was, you have to understand the polarities in the relationship. And he goes, when a woman doesn't feel taken care of or safe, she'll go into her masculine. And when a man feels like he's unsafe, he'll go into his feminine. And what happens is when there's a man that's in his feminine, that's not attractive to a woman. And when a woman is in her overly masculine, that is also not attractive to a man. So when we can actually, and let's be real, like there's a lot of unprogramming that we need to do to be able to go there. And to be able to know when to be masculine and when to be feminine, because it's not like women have to be feminine all the time and men have to be masculine all the time. I've definitely realized the problems with that growing up, but it's like, if we can understand the polarity in a relationship, and we can be whatever we want to be for the world, but whenever we get into a relationship and the doors are closed, like, how do I need to show up for her?
That's right.
And how do I actually feel like I like to be taken care of? And how do I, and so I think there's nothing, I'm not a woman, but I think there's probably nothing sexier to a woman than a man who's like really in his masculine, not a wounded masculine, but like a masculine man that wants to take care and wants to provide, whatever that means. It doesn't have to just be financially, but then also the exact opposite, where for a man, it's like nothing sexier than a woman. And like you're saying, it doesn't always necessarily matter what she looks like or any of that stuff. And sometimes it's just like an energy. It's like magnets being drawn to each other, right? It's like, it just feels like, holy shit, like this woman feels like powerful.
Yeah.
And there's something sexy about that.
Absolutely. If you're enjoying this episode, I wanted to remind you that this episode is being brought to you by the energy of healing and transformation. And it is your time to act now to transform your life by awakening your highest self. Join us March 23rd, 24th, and 25th in Austin, Texas, live at Awaken Your Highest Self. Tickets are on sale now. Go to DannyMorel.com/awaken and reserve your seats today. And I'm going to say, and something else I want to share with the men, the other way that because providing, right away in the construct of this 3D world, when we hear providing, we think money, right? And it's not just money. A man can provide in several different ways. And one of the greatest ways that a man can provide is emotionally, right? Where you allow the space for your woman to feel and express and say whatever it is that is going on in her life, in her mind, and in her heart. The thing is, for a man to get into that space where he can hold that space for her, he has to drop into his own heart. He has to heal his own mind. He has to be centered and aligned in his own energy. And I feel like that's where most men struggle.
Right.
So my question for you is, what was that journey like for you?
For the us in a relationship and her dropping in and me dropping in with her?
Yeah. For you first within yourself.
Yeah. I mean, the thing for me is I was really like in wounded masculine for a long time. And
what does that look like?
The biggest moments?
Because people don't like, they get triggered.
I'll tell you what it is. And I can remember an exact moment. It was like a life-changing moment in my life. I was running I ran what was called a pilot sales manager. I ran this entire office. The guy who owned the office was never there because he was running the entire state. And we were crushing it. We were doing really well. And he said to me, he goes, hey, you want to go get lunch today? And I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, meet me at Chipotle. Matt King, he's this huge guy and got this really deep voice and he doesn't sugarcoat anything. And he goes, man, I don't really know how else to say this, but a lot of people don't like you. And I was like, okay, fuck. What do you mean? And he's like, and he said this to me, he goes, I know your heart. I know what type of person you are. You don't present that to people. And he goes, the problem is you're running over everybody in the company that is not exactly like you. And I was like, damn, this is crazy. And so I started seeing how I was known as the guy who had the really sharp tongue. So I would fuck with you before, and you knew how good I was at fucking with you, had a really sharp tongue so that you would never come at me, right? And so I had this, and then I had another manager his name was Jeff, and Jeff was the best developer in the entire company of women, of females. So he developed more females than even other females did. And so what the real whole journey of the way it started for me is I was like, man, like, why are you so good at developing females? And he's like, to be honest with you, I've kind of studied females. And so he's like, I'll tell you what I did, and I want you to do the same thing. He goes, first off, you need to read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, which made me realize, like, we are kind of like from different planets, right? Yeah. Like, because when she does go and when my wife does go into like emotions, I'm like, let me fix it. I'm gonna be like, shut the fuck up. In the back of my head, I'm like, I can't do this. Let me just allow her to express. So there was that. And he goes, the other thing is you have to notice how they communicate with each other and understand it, and also how to make them feel safe, because there's so many women that have traumas around men. And he goes, I'll give you a really quick example. He goes, shake my hand. And so I shook his hand. So we did this, shake my hand, right? That's how men shake. He goes, you want to see how I shake a woman's hand? And he goes, it's just a little bit different, but mine is on the bottom and hers is on the top, which subconsciously makes her feel like, a little bit safer. And I was like, this is kind of crazy. And he goes, now what I want you to do is, he goes, I want you to read that book, and I want you to pay attention to the way that women communicate compared to men. And so I wasn't creepy in doing this, but I would sit at Starbucks and I would see, and I'd be like, okay, there's men communicating, there's women communicating. And I started reading these studies about how they were watching children, and they were watching children through like a mirror, so they couldn't see whatever it's called, the one-way mirror, two-way mirror. And what happened was there were these 4-year-old kids, and they were in school. And what they noticed is when they're in school, the boys would face towards the front of the class, and they would talk to each other like this and turn their head, and they'd have a full-on conversation, and they'd move their head, and they look this way. And even at a young age, the women would little girls would completely square up, and they'd give each other head nods and affirm that they're listening. And I realized that, number one, I was overly masculine. I was trying to hurt people a lot so that I wouldn't be hurt. And then number two, I wasn't communicating effectively to women, that I was listening and having them feel understood. And so a lot of times, like for men, we could be like, we hear a whole conversation on the couch with the person we're in a relationship with, and she's like, you're not listening to me. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I've been here the whole time, right? But like, we're not giving the visual cues, we're not giving the auditorial cues, right? And so you're like, I heard the whole fucking conversation, right? And she's like, you're not listening to me, but you're not communicating. You're laughing because you've been in the situation, right? Right? You've been in a situation. Yeah. And so I learned, and it became kind of intuitive after years and years and years of like, I know when I'm talking with a woman, I do hold my hand a different way when I shake their hand. It's not like for those that aren't listening, it's not like a dead fish, like but it's like, it's a little bit on the bottom side so that she is on the top side of it. And then what happens is I notice myself getting better at visual cues and auditory cues, and I'm listening. And from there, it's made me start to realize the difference between men and women, the way we communicate, and the way of making somebody, I feel like I'm a even better communicator with men because I've become a better communicator with women as well. And so that was the biggest point for me, where I realized like I was really in like wounded masculine, was I was trying to hurt everybody before you had a chance to hurt me.
I'm telling you, dude, you're like me.
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing.
Really?
I mean, I was known as, like, in the real estate industry, it's either you were on my team or I was going to kill you.
Right. 100%.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then, by the way, even on my team, it's either you were on the top of the team or
I'm going to kill you.
or I'm going to kill you or make you feel terrible or force you to get to the top.
We used to have a phrase called push up or push out.
Yeah.
That's really what we did. And that was it.
I used to tell in my sales meetings, I used to say, and by the way, all you old Intero agents, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I said, one of two things is going to happen. Is either we're going to make you feel really uncomfortable, you're going to leave, or we're going to make you feel really uncomfortable and you're going to grow.
Right.
But one of two things is going to happen. And
thing.
I'm perfectly fine with either of them, by the way.
Right.
And people would be like,
I know. It's
and I wouldn't say it like that. I was a complete asshole.
Oh my God. It's scary when you look back to who you used to be and how you used to communicate. But that's what I think is so fucking awesome. Why I'm obsessed with what I do. Like, everything is mindsets, because I think that this whole journey of life is just this fun discovery phase of like how I've lost myself and how I need to get back to who I truly, because when I look at Rob and videos of me when I was 4 years old at my birthday, playing in the sandbox by myself, and none of the other kids were around. I was just quiet, sweet kid, and I would bring my mom flowers, and I would get her rocks and stuff. And it's like, I've lost a lot of that. Yeah. And I'm trying to read, and that's just because of, we call it, blending with society. I call it domestication. We domesticate children so that they fit the way that we're supposed to fit into this world. And my whole thing is like, how do I rediscover the sweet, soft side of myself, and also the side of myself that could be masculine? So I think that's just the fun part of, and I don't think that there's ever a destination. I don't think I will ever get somewhere. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I think every day is fun, where I get to see these new things that allow me to grow and improve and shift back to what feels like my true self is.
For sure. Absolutely. And I want to bring up a couple of things about what you just said. The first one was, I have this feeling, mm-hmm. and I know you know exactly what I mean. I have this feeling where if someone comes into my life in a coaching relationship, mm-hmm. their life has to change.
Yep.
It has to change because they're going to be around an energy, a thought form, a way of seeing things that they have not been exposed to before.
Yep.
And that is the passion for me in our events, in our coaching environment, so forth and so on. Mm-hmm. And yet, for so many human beings that want change, they have never even thought about that, because the first thing they think of is the money,
Right.
the cost.
Right.
And if I look back in my life, as I'm sure you'll agree, what changed my life was the fact that I never thought about the cost. I always thought about who I wanted to become. And even if I didn't have the money, I found a way to get the money.
Right.
And that helped me so many times in life. I remember we were going to build our first custom house and the piece of land was, I don't know, call it $250,000. And I didn't have the money. But I looked the guy in the eye and said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 50 grand right now. And if I don't pay you the rest of the money within 1 year, you can keep my 50 grand.
Wow.
Because I wasted your time. And he was like, sweet, no problem. And guess what I did? I went on, I worked my ass off. But for most people, they'll go, oh my God, I don't have the money. It's okay. I won't do it.
Right.
Talk to me about the value of coaching. Like Jen laughs at me all the time because I have a coach for everything.
Me too. I do as well.
Because why would you live life without a coach?
Right.
Like, why would you try to figure things out on your own when other people have already done it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's easy for me. I've always worried about money up until recently where I've started to release that. There was a lot of scarcity around it, being raised so poor, and my mom applying for food stamps. We couldn't get food stamps. We had it because we had a card. Like you can't.
You're literally me.
Right. So it's like I had all of this scarcity around it. And then when I was 19 is when I hired my first coach. When I hired Hal Elrod and I hired John Berghoff, the two of them together, it was $500 a month. And I paid $350 a month for rent. So I was 19 years old, presented with this thing of $500 a month. And we'll teach you self-development, but it's also sales, because both of them were from Cutco. So they also taught me that. And I was like, I got a credit card. I don't even know if I've ever used it, but let me just put it on the credit card and I'll figure it out. Because what happened for me was the pain of staying in the same position was so much fucking worse than spending the money.
That's right.
And when I look back, I'm 36 years old now. I hired them 17 years ago. That was the best $500 a month I ever spent.
What was the return?
That's the thing.
You can't even quantify it.
Well, so here's what we say. This is what my partner and I say. So it's millions of dollars, but it's like the money doesn't even fucking matter. What it matters is like what it set me off to actually do and become. And so people always ask like, should I get a free mentor or paid mentors? I'm like, well, let me tell you about the benefit of both. Free mentors, I have free mentors that give me advice, but we don't meet consistently. I see them like a couple times a year, maybe, all of that stuff. But we don't meet consistently. They don't give me assignments on things I need to work on. And the biggest thing is they don't feel obligated for me to succeed. They want me to succeed, but they don't feel like there's an obligation for me to succeed. And I think when someone enters a paid coaching relationship, there is an obligation for us to provide whatever the outcome is that they're looking toward. If we take life coaching out, let's just take fitness, right? Like if I'm a fitness coach, I want that person, I get paid $200, $500 a month, whatever it is. I want that person to see results, and I want to do everything that I can to help that person get results, because number one, I care about them. And number two, the better results they get, the longer they're going to stay with me, which means I'm making my job basically indispensable, because they're like, I've gotten so many good results, I want to stay with this person. And so the thing that we always say is think about this is, and this is another way of reframing it when you think about coaching, right? Is I always say that for the people that I coach, the life coaches, your perfect client is usually you 3 to 5 years ago. Like that's usually who you're coaching, right? And what you're helping them work through. Go back, let's say it's 10 years ago. Go back 10 years ago and think about where you were in your life. Like for me, I can think back to literally October of 2010 when I was telling you a story of me living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Fort Lauderdale, 5 months behind on my car payment, living off pasta for 2 months. And remember that you were in that position at one point in time and you have gotten to where you are now. How much would somebody have to pay you to go back? You can't fucking pay me. There's no way.
No.
And so you think about being able to provide that service for somebody else as a coach, or if you think about, well, where could I be in 10 years?
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, whatever, $500 a month, $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month is nothing compared to what it will get me over the next 10 years, whether it's money or whether it's happiness or whether it's joy or being able to spend more time with my children, all of these things. And so I think that's another way of flipping it on its head versus like, don't think about the money coming out of your bank account right now. Think about all of the joy, the happiness, the money that you won't make, everything over the next 10 years if you don't do it.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. I don't know if you've gotten here yet in your program, but for me at the beginning, it's all evolved where I used to be a real estate coach, right? And then I became just a business coach, and I taught people how to scale their companies, right? And then now where we're at right now, yesterday, I had this incredible experience where I had a one-on-one conversation with a new inner circle member. And, when you spiritually develop, your energy provides the space for other people to unravel whatever it is that they have to unravel.
Sure.
So halfway through the call, she's literally, first minute, she's like, I just want you to let you know, money is fine. We're starting to attract people like that. Money's not the issue, but that they want to heal. That they want to heal and they want more balance and they want more time, right? Which is everything I wanted. Like, this is what I wanted, right? And I'm sitting there, I'm listening to her. And then I asked her a question and she just starts breaking down in tears. She's got through a bad breakup. She thought he was the one, right? I'm in no means a relationship coach, but I understand what a human being has to go through in order to process grief and in order to get back on the right track. So I took her through a cord cutting ceremony and it was absolutely beautiful. It was a 35 to 40 minute, her and me one-on-one releasing the energy of this. And by the end, she was like, she physically looked different. And to me, it's like, I guess I want to know from you, has your coaching evolved? Because mine has evolved as I have evolved. And like all the secrets of life that I know, so that you don't have to struggle and work as hard and spend so much time in stress and quite frankly, and attract bad health and be in a bad relationship. I want to feed that to you. And then the money stuff, that's the easy.
Right. It's changed a lot. Yes. So I can tell you how it's gone through. So I started off as just a life coach, right? Just quote unquote, a life coach. That's what I identified with, mindset coach, whatever it wanted to be. And then I started growing this business. And then everything that I do now with teaching people life coaching and all that is teaching people how to grow a business. So what we actually say, my team and myself, is we transform human consciousness through business. Because what normally happens, if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, which is one of the biggest things that you'll ever go through as far as transformation is running a business, right? And one of the reasons why, at least for me, I know I've been blessed enough over a lot of networking to meet some extremely, extremely successful people. And I find that almost all of them had a terrible childhood or were fucked up in some sort of way. And we, myself included, thought that by succeeding, whatever that means to us, making $1 million in a year, whatever it is, we thought that by succeeding, it would fix our problem. And then we got to succeeding, whatever that was, and we're like, I still feel the fucking same. And then so what we do with a lot of the, that's the main thing that we do is with helping life coaches. But on the other side, we also have a mastermind that we work with people, and it's literally people who are already successful running multi-million-dollar businesses that feel like there's something missing.
That's right.
And what it really comes down to is like the first one I can think of, and he's actually on our team now, is Amar, who's on our team, and he's one of the most incredible humans ever. He went through the whole program, went through everything, and he runs 5 Avises. So he has 5 Avis locations, crushes it. 2 of them are in the top 3 in the entire United States, but he was working like 80 hours a week. He's got 4 kids that are under the age of 5 years old, wasn't spending time with them, all of these things. And on the very first event he ever came to with us, it came back to a story. I won't share a story because it's his, of something that happened to him that he never even shared with his wife, that he's been with for like 10 years now. And he's like, I can't believe this thing was such a big thing in my life that I had never really worked through. And I've never even told to my wife. And so I was like, okay, you're going to tell it to your wife tonight. And this was when COVID was happening. So it was all through Zoom. We were in an event through Zoom, right? And so he comes in the next day and he's like light as a feather. And long story short, he told her the story. And over time, what happened was he had such a grip on his business that he couldn't delegate, which you've seen before. Everybody does this shit, right? Can't delegate, but he came back to trust issues from this event that happened, not telling his wife. There's all these different things where it's kind of moving into his mindset's moving into his entire life, his business, his relationships, everything. So over time, like we started working with him, he ends up overhiring people in his company. He works 5 hours a week in his Avis company. He works 5 hours a week. His companies are doing better than he ever has, but he doesn't do any of the things.
You don't have to.
And so what's crazy about then, he's like, I've got so much free time. Can I come work with you guys? So he's literally on my team now. He's got 5 super successful Avis locations. But what comes down to it though, is that the reason why I love business so much is because business is a massive place for transformation. Because if you want to succeed, like actually think about it, like wanting to succeed is a dumb thing. Because it's not fun. It's going to bring up all of your shit. And then you think that something's going to come on the outset of it, right? And so a lot of people that become successful, they get there and they're like, well, what now? I still feel like shit. And I think this is, obviously there's mental health problems, but I also think there's a lot of reasons why very successful people commit suicides, because they think they're going to get to the top of the mountain and everything's going to be better. They get to the top of the mountain and nothing is better.
Right.
And they've been they've been going up the wrong ladder in life. And so I love business in that sense. And that's where it's transitioned for us, is like, it was first just, I'm going to teach you about yourself. Then it was like, oh, I've had this successful business. I'm going to teach you how to run this successful business. And now it's like, I'm going to teach you how to free yourself from the thing that got you to get that successful business. And from that, your business will actually grow.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the last piece of it that's been the most exciting for me is I intuitively was able to work with people as a coach, but to put it into a system, really, really hard. Like, I'm not a system person. I'm not a process person. And over the past 6 months, I developed the system and started teaching it to everybody. And then but what's been really cool is not me going in and making them feel and understood and fixing their problems, but getting them into breakout rooms and then fixing each other.
That's
and that's where it's like, nothing makes me more excited than watching other people go through a system and helping somebody else go through it.
I love it. Yeah. It's at Awaken, which is our event, we are now starting to bring some of our tribe and inner circle members to help hold space and integrate everybody.
It's awesome.
Yeah. I love the feeling.
It's fun. They always say the best leader develops leaders. And that's kind of the way that I see. It was all about me for a really long time. My life was all about me and making money. The first 32 years of my life was how can I just make money and succeed and all this stuff? And it's fun to get to a place where it's I don't fucking care about any of these things. It's all about how can I make these other people better in themselves, but also help other people become better. And it's the most fulfilling feeling I've ever had.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Final thoughts.
Yes.
For someone that's listening to this and say, okay, I want to become better.
Yeah.
Right? You guys have got me thinking. I understand there's nothing stopping me but me. Mm-hmm. Okay, where do I start? What would be some basics?
Well, shit, we need another hour for that one. Because the real thing I think is, and I always go back to is your relationship with your parents. I always go back to that, is what is your relationship with your parents like? And I was working live with somebody on a Zoom call earlier this week, and her business, she's been a coach for 3 years, but she's been not growing she hasn't been growing barely at all. Right. And we're talking and I go, and it came back to I just feel like I'm disappointing myself and I'm disappointed. I go, what parent did you learn that from? Mm-hmm. And she goes, my mom. And I go, okay, let's talk about that. And by talking about the relationship with her mom, ended up fixing all these other things downstream. And it was, it was a 45-minute conversation, but it was so cool to see, because I was like, okay, her mom is still alive. I go, you're going to call your mom and let me know how it goes. She ended up getting on the Zoom call the next day. She called her mom and she's like, it's so funny because I was like, all right, with everybody here, I'm going to take you through exactly how I did this with her and what exactly we did here. So I took everybody through and I said, all right, now everybody, I want you to see if your own story pops up and I want you to journal through it. They're journaling through what they popped up by seeing their story. And she's literally, I kid you not, the entire journaling session, the cameras or computers right here, she's like, and she's literally can't stop smiling because she's free from this story.
I know.
But the story was created from her relationship with her mom. Long story short, I'll just tell it to you real quick, is her dad took pictures in fighter planes when they were in Afghanistan and stuff. So he was the one who's taking pictures of the war zones, all this stuff. 9/11 happened. She was 5 years old. She had 2 younger sisters. She was worried that her dad was going to die. And she noticed that her mom didn't seem to care. And she thought, oh, my mom doesn't care about my dad. And she, 5 years old, develops this resentment towards her mom. Then she becomes, she gets to 10 years old and realizes that, her mom was super successful, PhD. Her aunt is very successful. She's a professor at Brown University, all this stuff. And she was in advanced classes learning German and French and failing German and French at 10 years old, right? And she thought she was a failure because she couldn't get it. And she took this disappointment, this anger towards her mom, flipped into being disappointed, and then she's lived out her entire life from now on of that disappointment, right? And I said to her a simple question. I said, is it possible that your mom was fucking terrified when your dad was overseas because she's got 3 little girls under the age of 5, you're the oldest out of all of them, and that she was trying to remain strong for you guys so that you guys wouldn't be afraid? And she just cries. all of it comes out. And she's like, I've seen my mom in the wrong light. She's like, she was trying to be strong. And it was just, and so I always go back to parental relationships because that's usually where it starts, or if someone's adopted or grandparents, whatever it might be. And so the reason why it's a long thing is because I really think people should ask themselves the question, do I resent my mom and do I resent my dad?
Yeah.
And if they ask that question, I've done it with both of them. The answer to both of them was yes.
Yeah.
And I found a lot of things that came up through that. I'm going to tell you the last thing that was really, really enlightening for me is, for me, I believe that we have many lives that we live.
Yeah.
Right. And I used to see my father as, I loved him. He was great. I knew his demons because he saw his father kill himself, when he was 12 years old, walked in the room after his dad shot himself in the mouth. And so I always had like love for that little kid. But then I asked myself, do I resent my dad? And I was like, yes. The answer is yes, I do resent my dad because I feel like he wasn't there. He didn't give me the lessons. He didn't teach me, how to shave. He didn't teach me how to treat a woman. He didn't teach me any of these things. And but then I thought to myself, if I signed up for this life as Rob Dial, and he signed up for that life of Steve Dial, and my mom signed up for her life as Debbie Dial, and we've all signed up for this life. Our soul signed up for this life for a specific purpose. My dad, who I always thought was less evolved than me, signed up to be coming out to walk into the room to see his father kill himself, to go through fucking trauma from 12 years old until 48 years old, where he eventually accidentally killed himself, so that I
That's right, bro.
could evolve.
That's right, bro. That's right.
And I was like,
Yeah.
holy shit, my dad is the evolved being.
That's right, bro.
And the release, like I'm getting fucking goosebumps. Your eyes are starting to well up. Like there's a feeling of he was the advanced being that did this for me so that I could have this change and go out and change the fucking world in my little way of doing it.
Before I wasn't going to say it, but when I'm glad you brought it up, but your dad's heart attack, the gift in all of that was that now you're able to be free.
100%.
Yeah.
But I wasn't free until I realized the resentment that I had.
Yeah, because that's what dropped you out of he was constantly in his, and obviously he was dealing with the wound of seeing his father still, but it allowed you to build what you now have.
Right.
It was the same thing with my mom.
Yeah.
Same thing with my mom.
Think about the gratitude that you have towards that. And the gratitude that I have for going through it, because how many fucking people have we helped, and how many people will we help over the course of our lifetime?
Millions.
Right.
Yeah.
How fucking amazing are they for doing that for us?
Bro, that's my mom right there.
It's awesome.
Yeah. That's why I have her there, and that's why it's like, one day I got it, man. One day I got it. It's like she signed up for it.
Yeah. And you've got her on your wall, and this is my dad's that I keep on my chest right next to my heart. And so it's like, we get it. And when people look to what's my relationship with my mom, what's my relationship to my dad, do I have a resentment towards it? I think that's the first step of real improvement. I could say go read a book, and Think and Grow Rich is a great book, and they're all great, and all of those are great. But I think the core of it, of our break from our true self, usually comes through the parental relationship, because you don't have to have a psychology degree in order to be a parent, and even when you have a psychology degree, clearly your kids are gonna get fucked up somehow, because that's just the way it goes. And so I think if people really want true change, the best question to ask is, do I have resentment towards my mom? Do I have resentment towards my dad? And just be honest with be honest with yourself. And people are afraid of journaling, burn the fucking piece of paper if you need to after. Just be fully transparent with yourself and just see if anything comes up. And then ask yourself, can I see this from a different perspective? When you can see it from a different perspective, it dissolves. It disappears.
I love that. I love that. How do people learn more about you, find out about you?
I have my podcast is my main thing. It's the Mindset Mentor. We just crossed $150 million of that. I have, I'm Rob Dial everywhere else. I'm Rob Dial on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all of those places. So ROBDIAL. And then the Mindset Mentor is the podcast. We put out stuff 4 times a week.
Awesome, bro.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Good conversation. Yeah. That's this week's episode of The Higher Self. I'm sure you enjoyed it as I did. And man, there were so many nuggets in this one. I want to encourage you guys to go back and listen more. And listen more. And then, when you're ready, it's interesting you said that, Rob, but when you're ready, and you want to heal that relationship with your mother and your father, seriously, guys, come to Awaken, because I was mid-seminar when God literally showed me it's all because of their mother and father. That's the whole ball game right there. You heal that, everything changes.
100%.
100%. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching or listening. If this week's episode resonated with you deeply and you're ready to discover more about yourself, go to DannyMorel.com and check out some of our upcoming events and our resources. Or if you'd like to learn more about our coaching programs, simply shoot us a message on Instagram and one of our team members will reach out to you immediately.